The Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to the disciples, "You have heard that it was said to those of ancient times that you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to just judgment. But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, 'You fool,' you will be liable to the hell of fire. So when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are on the way to court with him, or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly I tell you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny." The Gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. I've talked about Joe before a few times. Joe is a businessman from West Michigan who owned he didn't own, but he was chairman of the board of a big industrial chemical company. And I used to meet with him 30 or more years ago, and he was this guy who worked his way up, which he could do. He literally was a floor sweeper in the beginning, and he just worked his way up the ladder to this industrial chemical company and became the chairman of the board. And he had lessons that he wrote out about how to sell industrial chemicals and how to represent your firm. And I was interested, and I sat and I listened to him. I visited with him every once a week for several weeks, and he was retired by then. But Joe always said, he says, one of my key lessons is to never speak poorly of the competition, ever. Never, ever speak poorly of the competition. He said, because you see, the competition, along with our firm, are actually working independently, but in some ways together to create the kinds of chemicals that will help industry move forward. I have to have an appreciation for their workmanship, for the things that they do. And I have to recognize and be honest with myself and my clients that sometimes my competitors have products that are better suited for their needs. And then, of course, there are times when our products would be better. So, but to recognize, he said, that this industry that we are in is an industry of people who are trying to do something of value, certainly trying to make a profit, but there's no room for this bad-mouthing of the other. It's safe to say, and I don't even know if Joe was a faith-filled guy, but he kind of talked like one. We never talked about God. But I got the sense that as I was reflecting on today's gospel, that Joe somehow heard that lesson. He recognized that to insult another person is just not useful. And I never did ever hear him speak poorly of another. He was certainly beloved back in the day. He was, by then, 30 years ago, saddened by the fact that the whole act of selling became more and more contentious, even within his firm, that this bad mouth stuff started up, and it really disturbed him, kind of broke his heart. But in any event, Jesus understood as he was on this mountain with his disciples. The last 2 or 3 weeks we've been on the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is speaking to his disciples. There are crowds of people gathering that want to be near Jesus and near his disciples. And Jesus takes a time out to continue to teach his disciples some of the fundamentals of shalom. And this morning, he is looking more focused on the actual Ten Commandments. And we see him unpacking the whole notion of thou shalt not kill. He wanted his disciples to understand that every life is profoundly, overwhelmingly sacred. And one of the things that's going to be challenging when we take shalom out into the world, it's going to be a challenge to people. Because we're representing a faith in a way that will change things and challenge people and irritate people. And it's possible a certain kind of contentiousness may take place. But I ask you to refrain from insults, from name-calling, from not being able to listen to what the other person says. You see, Jesus in his ministry, each one of these commandments for Jesus represents a door that is opened to go more deeply into the grace of God. And he was concerned that there was such profound legalism in his day that these commandments were reduced to just a few lines, but in fact, they were only a doorway to open up and to allow the human imagination, along with the Spirit of God, to unpack the fullness of that teaching that will always change in time and space. And so Jesus says to the disciples, beware, be careful, be aware of the fact that every person is of value. You know, Jesus is trying to help us, help his disciples, help the world begin to understand more fully what the truth might be. And he may even hearken back to that proverb, iron sharpens iron, that truth understood comes from a measure of conflict. We need to be open to the fact that we may know some things, but we may not know all things. And God puts a variety of people in our lives with different perspectives, different talents, gifts, weaknesses, that when we open ourselves up and we become interdependent and willing to listen and let go of our fears, all of a sudden we grow. The person who hurls insults at someone they disagree with is simply trying to change the discussion. I don't want to talk about the issue. Frankly, I'm not really equipped to. And so the person attacks the other. And what happens, my friends, is we lose an opportunity. The person who hurls the insult, the person who receives it, the group that watches it, we lost a sacred opportunity for dialogue to be established that would allow people to begin to explore more fully and comprehensively just what is truth. Sadly, we are at a point in time where this type of contentiousness, these insults, are being hurled at the highest levels of our society. It has become normative. We have begun to lose the capacity to imagine together, to be open together. We're not being shepherded as a country to explore the fullness of what God has in fact placed before us. We've gotten to the point where you're either right or you're wrong. And if you don't agree with me, you're terrible. Brothers and sisters, with every ounce of energy in my soul, I tell you, when you hear someone insulting another, they are committing murder. They are breaking that commandment. And what's happening in our society is a type of a Holocaust that we have never truly experienced before. Yes, there have been times of great tension. But never before in our society has it gotten to the point where different opinions are not honored and the common table of communion is not established. These are extraordinary times, and our country has decimated this commandment. We have an opportunity, each one of us, to reflect on this extraordinary period of time, to put ourselves to the test, to not accept the insults, to recognize really what they forensically mean. That's all they are. I don't want to talk about the issues. Don't give in to that. Each one of us has a unique struggle in that regard, no matter where we come from in the political or economic or religious spectrum. We all are uniquely challenged by this. Let us demand more of ourselves. Let us demand more of the church, more of our leaders in government, more of the media folks and everything else. Let us demand that we find a common ground. Let us pick up that torch that Jesus is giving to his disciples today when he teaches them about the real meaning of the commandment, thou shalt not kill. Amen.